Hey everyone, welcome back to the Popanimecomics Lounge, where I have with me one of the most recognizable cover artists out there currently, and that is Eric Basalua, or Ebas for short. And he has worked for Top Cow, Zenescope, Marvel, and DC, to name a few. So thank you for being on the podcast.
Hey, it's my pleasure. It's good to be back. I haven't done one of these in years, so it's good to be back.
Wonderful. No pressure on me. And just so everybody knows, the reason why I am super excited is because Ebas's covers are what actually caught my attention to Zenescope. And so I am super excited to be talking to you. And before we dive into some of these covers, I really am curious because you've been drawing comics for a long time now. How did you
hmm
initially get into comics?
Oh man, I'm very, very, very lucky. I'm extremely fortunate and very blessed. I'm actually second generation comics. I was born into it. My dad was into comics. He was buying X-Men and Avengers when they were 15 cents each. He went to the original newsstands where they used to spin on the racks and he'd buy them for 15 cents. And he got into them from his older brother, my uncle, who actually his son gets into comics as well. Like he grades and buys and sells and trades. He even buys my own work because of his dad. You know, his dad's collection was legendary in my family because he kept them all in great condition. He has X-Men #1, Fantastic Four #1, all the original Marvel issues when they first came out. And my dad and his older brother were buying comics. They would tell me stories about hopping on their bikes and riding all the way down to the local corner store and buying comics. And they were always laying around everywhere. My dad used to draw the pictures, old Jack Kirby art. So I was kind of born into it. I'm very, very lucky. There was art and comics everywhere, and I just picked it up. It kind of came natural to me. So I want to say it's in the blood, it's in the family. I come from old school Marvel.
Yeah, and to talk about that,
Yeah,
because old school Marvel had amazing artwork. And so,
yeah.
what was that like picking that up and really copying, drawing that at a very young age and really learning from arguably the best cover
Yeah.
artists and artists out there?
Yeah, you know what? My dad was a big fan of John Buscema as well, and I want to say he's probably my favorite of all the Golden Age guys. Obviously Jack Kirby, but you can't put him in a category because he's the king. But my dad used to draw and copy like legendary Buscema covers where Giant Man is standing over Thor and Captain America, and the Wasp is like flying around, and Hawkeye is there, and he would do it on these big giant pieces of paper, and his art really caught my eye, and I just fell in love with how well he was able to move a figure. And so being inspired by my dad, I kind of copied his art and he copied John Buscema and Jack Kirby. And I just fell instantly in love with the dynamics of the way a human being can be drawn. And I started drawing myself when I was 8 years old. When I was eight, I decided I'm going to draw comics for the rest of my life. And I did nothing but draw. I stayed up late nights. I gave myself deadlines. My mom was wise enough to keep all the art. So I have a briefcase full of drawings from when I was 8, 9, 10 years old, and you can see the progression. And around 12, I discovered Jim Lee, his X-Men stuff and his Stormwatch stuff and Wildcat stuff, and realized it was the same guy. And I discovered him at 12. And from 12 years old, that's when like my art really jumped in level because I was studying much more modern guys with all the detail and the cross-hatching and things like that. And at 12, I decided for sure this is going to be my career. At 8, I was just like, I definitely want to draw comics. But when I was 12, it was definitely cemented that now I'm serious. You know, I took my deadline serious, my reference material seriously. I had my library of reference, and I have all of it. One day when I'm like uber famous, I'm going to be able to show my progression from 8 years old all the way to today.
And so you're 12, and what other influences were really developing your art from the ages of 12 before you came into Top Cow when you were, I think, 18 or 19?
My portfolio was first looked at when I was about 17, and they wanted to hire me right then and there. But I actually showed Rob Liefeld my stuff when I was 15, and he really liked my stuff, and I was too young. They're like, hey, when you get a little bit older, and finally when I turned 18, Top Cow saw my stuff as well as Wildstorm, and Top Cow liked my work more, and that was pretty much all she wrote. But I've been practicing for that particular day at San Diego Comic Con since I was 8.
So, what is
Um,
that like to show Rob Liefeld your work and then Top Cow likes your work and to have it happen so young? Because not every artist gets that privilege and
that
not everybody is
privilege.
talented like you.
You don't know how grateful I am just in life because not only was I blessed at a young age to be exposed to it, and I started real young, I happen to have been born in Southern California where I could literally drive down to Rob Liefeld's studio. I've been in the studio and I took a tour of their Anaheim location and I went to Top Cal and I was able to drive into work. They're like, hey, yeah, come work for us. And I was very, very fortunate. If I didn't live in Southern California, I would have never been able to do it. I was so lucky. I feel very blessed to have started so young. I got exposed to really good art at a really young age. And I try not to take advantage of it because I went to San Diego Comic Cons not to take it for granted. I was a fan. I stood in these long lines for Michael Turner, even Andy Park. And I know what it's like because I met several of these celebrities in the comic world. And some guys are really nice and some guys are not nice. And you remember the feeling of walking away. It's like, oh man, like he's exactly what I imagined. Or like, wow, he was a bit of a douche. Like you remember the feeling. And I wanted to make sure that as a fan that's waited hours and hours and hours and trying to get autographs and sketches, I remember the feeling as a fan, like make sure you make all of them walk away happy, feeling good. And I'm very blessed coming from a young age.
And one of
I
the
feel,
nicest people to talk about was at Top Cow was Mark Silvestri, who was your
yeah,
boss. And
yeah,
really cool guy. I've heard so
very
many
cool guy.
amazing stories about him, but what was it like to work with him and what did he teach you?
And I can talk about that for days because I worked there 10 years in-house. I've actually slept on his couch one time and I've used his like shower and bathroom. Like he's such a nice guy. He was just like, yeah, man, come hang out, go kick it. Like you don't expect him to be such a nice guy. You know, we've gotten drive-through together and he's gotten like the whole crew donuts and Subway. He's such a down-to-earth guy as a human being, as a person, as a mentor. That's like a whole nother level. Like what he was able to combine in being a sensei was kindness and like encouragement and motivation. I've seen other guys give critiques. I'm not going to mention names, but they weren't even critiquing my work. And I see them critiquing other people. And they were kind of like soul crushing because they think that honesty is a good way to teach. And I never thought that they were good at getting results. But Mark Silvestri, his record shows like he's just the best teacher. He's mentored Dave Finch, Joe Benitez, Michael Turner, myself. There's just so many people under his name that he has credit for mentoring. And the reason why is because in my experience, the way I saw him teach, by the time you were done with his critique versus someone else, like you walked away from Mark Silvestri feeling good. You feel motivated, like, oh man, next time I'm going to make it so good and I'm going to kick so much ass and he's going to like it. Like he always encouraged your talent, no matter how good you were. I've seen him critique guys off the street and showing a portfolio for the first time and they were not good. You know, they didn't really have a future. And I know Mark saw it as well, but he never ripped you a new one. He was just always encouraging. So being there for a decade, I learned so much, like how to be a good person, how to critique other people's work. And I always use the Mark Silvestri approach to make sure that they're encouraged when they walk away. Ripping them a new one may work at universities and colleges and Ivy League situations, but like in art, it's supposed to inspire. You want to inspire. So Silvestri was just a privilege to even be around. You know, he was a nice guy. He would almost always buy us all dinner. Like we'd be in the bullpen all working. Sometimes there's like 10 of us in there and, you know, we take a break and he just like, hey, you know, let's get some pizza, let's get some donuts, some coffee. And he would just hand us cash and we would go like as little minions and then get it all and bring it back and just hang out. We would just all eat and talk. And there was pool tables at Top Cal. We had Xboxes. We'd play Halo for hours. We'd play foosball. It was just a tremendous experience for myself. And again, I was lucky enough to be born here in SoCal and be able to drive to the offices and witness all that. I can go on and on. And if you ask about Mark Silvestri, there's nothing but amazing things to say. I haven't even talked about his actual talent, watching him draw. My desk was right next to his. It's a whole nother topic, but that'll eat up the whole time we have.
And one of the nice things about Top Cow is Top Cow had a lot of really cool comics that really allowed artists to cut their teeth and really showcase their talent. And I'm going to name a few of them that people know: Tomb Raider and Witchblade. And you
Of
worked
course.
as a penciler, an inker, and a cover artist on these books. And I'm sure you could go
Yes.
on for hours on both of these books because they have huge histories with the
Yes.
writers and creators and everything that you've done. But what was that like working on in those books?
Top Cow books were and still are my favorite to work on. I love drawing for Marvel and DC when I've drawn their characters. And it's a nostalgic feeling, that childhood feeling. Like I couldn't believe I got to draw Superman on a cover. And it had Jim Lee's art on the inside of the book, no less. And he was one of my top two heroes, Jim Lee and Mark Silvestri. And being able to go home and show my mom and dad, because they took us to San Diego Comic-Con every year. So it was like a big family thing. Everybody was into it. And like, look, Ma, I drew Superman, your favorite character, on a cover of a real book. Like it's nostalgic and everything, but the Top Cow books, Silvestri designed all of them, and he has this organic design sense. It's the best I've ever seen in any of all comics. Like the way that he designed the Witchblade costume and the Darkness costume, they're just some of the best character designs. So like it was what I was made for. Like my particular talent like really resonated with Silvestri design. So it was a dream come true. I worked on those books you mentioned, Witchblade and Darkness, and I did my own Tomb Raider books as well. And it was just a lot of fun. You know, she was just a hit video game. And when I drew my Tomb Raider books, here's a great story. I went to my editors and I was like, hey, you know what? I really want to draw this book. I drew 3 issues of Tomb Raider, and I said, Laura Croft has a lot of skills. She's a hand-to-hand combat fighter. She's a gymnast. She's an athlete. And I know she has all these skills. So I want her to showcase all these skills and not use her guns. And I always tell people, hey, did you notice that she didn't shoot a single bullet in the 3 issues that I did? And they're like, holy crap, no, I didn't even realize this. And she fought the Magdalena, who guest starred in the book. And it was great. Being a Top Cow, I was able to walk into the creative directors and editors and make a suggestion like that. Like, hey, can this main character who's known for her guns not use them at all? They're like, brilliant. Yes, let's do that. And I loved it. I had a lot of creative freedom, a lot of like input, and I had the backing of Mark Silvestri. One time I got to work with Paul Jenkins, and we looked over the script and we decided like, hey, maybe we need more action in this issue. And I had the whole support of the whole staff and Silvestri himself, and we had a lot more excitement in that issue. And I was able to work with him and make it happen like that. It was just a joy, man. It was just like a dream. It was like a comic book version of Disneyland.
In talking about comic book versions of Disneyland, you got to work on a very cool book, which was a combination of Marvel's Wolverine and Witchblade. What was that
Oh,
like
man.
being a Marvel fan?
Oh yeah, and especially a Wolverine fan. Like that one probably takes the cake for like the most nostalgic childhood joy, because Wolverine was in my top 2 favorite characters of all time and is my current number 1. The other one was Thor. I love drawing Thor. I loved Thor growing up. He was my dad's favorite, so like it's kind of born and bred into me like a football team sort of situation gets passed down. But Wolverine was my very own favorite. Like it wasn't influenced by my dad or my uncle or anything like that, because he's such a modern character. And being a huge Jim Lee fan and Mark Silvestri fan, like no one ever drew Wolverine like cooler than those guys. And I was like, holy crap, I get to draw him alongside Witchblade, no less. And with Chris Claremont writing the words. I was nervous, but not like scared nervous. I was excited to tackle the project because this was the moment I was waiting for. Unfortunately, at the time, I started getting a little bit lazier by the time I got to Wolverine Witchblade. And I started taking longer on pages and missing deadlines because like Top Cow's kind of like, that's just their thing, draw at your leisure. And I drew the first half of the book really, really well and all the detail. And then the second half of the book, like I kind of ate through all of my time and I drew them a little faster. And those were all the action pages of Wolverine. So it was one of the bigger challenges because I couldn't sacrifice the detail because it's Wolverine. So like some of the pages would take me 18, 22 hours to do, and I wouldn't move. I wouldn't eat. You know, I'm in the Top Cow offices. Mark Silvestri randomly walks around and like looks over your shoulder, like, hey, what are you working on? And you had to make sure that you were drawing the best you possibly could, just in case Mr. Mark Silvestri is walking around. It was a lot of pressure, but fun and excitement because he was my all-time favorite and it was nostalgic. So it was a great experience drawing that book. It was surreal. I couldn't believe that I got to do it. I couldn't believe it. It was a dream. By the way, most of my stories are going to sound that way. I'm very grateful for my job drawing these characters because, again, I went to San Diego Comic-Con every year since I was 12 years old, all 4 days. And I got to meet the creators. I got to meet Mark Silvestri, Andy Park, Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld, Dale Keown, all of those guys in my era. You know, I got to meet Chris Claremont. I was a fan and I got to meet every creator I've ever liked, worshiped, and been a fan of. So being on the other side of the table finally, like it's just a dream come true. So my stories are going to sound a lot like that.
And then there are two more books from Top Cow that I want to talk about. And one of them you mentioned already, which is The Magdalena, as you were the
Yeah.
penciler and the cover artist on this book. And this was, I think, one of your first big opportunities. And the other one is City of Heroes, which was based off the video game. And that was interesting. And David Nakayama was involved in that book. And Mark Waid was also involved as a writer, who's one of those legendary writers. So, what was it like
Mhm.
really working on these two projects? Because they definitely showcase your skills.
Well, I can't really talk too much about City of Heroes because in your research, you must have looked up my name. And my brother actually inked a lot of comic book stuff, and his name is in the book. So it never really worked on that. But my brother did. He did a lot of inking on that. So I can't really talk about that one because that one wasn't me. But John Magdalena was definitely the big outbreak of my career. It was my big hit. It was my big coming out party. That one changed everything. I actually made it to the cover of previews on my very first issue. And again, I was blown away. I'm a very grateful person. I'm a very spiritual person. I was thanking my lucky stars. I was always very grateful to make sure to keep getting those opportunities and not mess things up. And I was very grateful. Magdalena, not only did I get to design the costume that I wanted to draw, again, I made it to the previews. It made it into the top Wizard 100 list, the top 100 comics of the month. It was really nice to be there. I was in the top, I think, 70% by issues, and it was such a great feeling. Like it was a dream come true. You never think that anyone would really like your work. And anytime I was in previews and they saw my name, like the sales always kind of jumped up a little bit. And this was not something that I went and looked at. People would tell me like, hey, your books always just sell a little bit more. And it was such a great feeling because man, did I put a lot of hours into those pages. Magdalena specifically. Sometimes I drew 2 pages a day. When I was in my stride, I drew 3 pages a day. I was fast. I never once compromised my detail. That's the one thing I would never, never give up. Magdalena is a book I'm very, very, very proud of. I drew 4 issues, cover to cover. And the first issue was actually had a couple of extra pages in it. I drew all the covers and I made them all on time. The book was actually late because of the writer, and that normally never happens. At Top Cow, it was always the artist. They're the ones that were always late. But for once, it wasn't the case. But there were days where like I would not eat. I remember very vividly, like I would chop up apples or like grapes, and like I would have them in a bowl, and I would eat little pellets of food when I had a moment of rest. I would sleep in my chair at the bullpen at Top Cow. I wouldn't go home. I would just like take quick power naps to get these pages done because I was so hungry for it. When I was drawing Magdalena, that was like my dream come true. I got to draw my own series. I couldn't believe they let me design the costume. We even had a contest that we built all the way around that whole costume. Like, you, the fans, get to choose which costume do you want to see. I drew like 10, 15 different versions of her costume, and the fans got to speak out. And it was like a whole event. Top Cow really pushed Magdalena when I drew it like a lot. So they put a lot of advertisement, a lot of money into it. And it was great exposure. It put me on the map of sorts, like in the non-top two. It really put me on the map, that particular book. And I was very grateful to have that experience with Magdalena. It's my favorite one of all of them.
And I think you kind of spoke about this a little bit right now, but what is that like to have a company believe in you and also be in the top and starting to get recognized for what you are doing and the work you're putting in? Because that's what really happened. This is kind of the key series that put you on the map, for lack of a better word.
It was surreal because Mark Silvestri, like, he okayed everything, like it had to go all the way to the top. So knowing that I had a whole company backing me and having faith and all that stuff, it's a lot of pressure. At some point it did get to me because towards the end of my years at Top Cal, I drew less and less and I drew a little slower and slower because I got a little lazy. It was probably all the pressure because they were like, okay, well, draw the next batch of books or draw the next batch of pages. And to draw that detail and that level every single page, it definitely wore you out. But having the faith of the company was definitely amazing because they would take you and send you to the San Diego Comic Con, and they would pay for my hotel. They would pay for the food. And, it was a dream. My parents, they used to save all year so we could take a family trip to San Diego. And all of a sudden, I'm going there for free on someone else's dollar, on someone else's dime. There were days where I would get a knock on my desk from Top Cat. They would be like, hey, do you want to help design this statue? And I'm like, what? I was a young kid. They hired me at 18. I got in at 19. And I imagine it's how Kobe Bryant must have felt. Like, he can't believe it. Like, the NBA, the Lakers of all people, they're backing me at 18 years old right out of high school. It's a lot of faith. And it was a joy at the same time. It validated my style. I put a lot of work into my look and my style. It was a blend of a lot of artists that I really like. Jim Lee and Sylvester are obviously my biggest influences. But I love J. Scott Campbell. I grew up with Danger Girl. So I met Top Cow, liked my style, and I guess it was marketable. And I loved the idea that they can use my art to help sell their product because I wanted to get my art out there. And like I said, it was a dream. I felt like Kobe Bryant. Like I was just this kid among all these adults. I've never had a real job. I've never worked before. Top Cow is literally my first step into the working force. And they gave me a key card. I can come and go as I please. I had a key to the front door. It was just amazing to have their faith because they use you as gimmick and selling points. You know, like, hey, the San Diego Comic-Con exclusive cover is by Ebas. It's so amazing to have that faith. I feel like I didn't live up to my potential towards the end, and I regret it. Like, I wish I would have drawn like with the same hunger over the years. Like after 10 years, I started becoming a cover artist and drawing covers for Zenescope and Aspen, and that was a lot of fun. And then came the hot girl era. So I started getting into drawing the covers instead of pages because drawing pages for Top Cow is like boot camp. Every day, every minute, there's no time to sleep or rest. Everybody, they get off of work at 5 and go home, and that's it. Their responsibility's done. When I was drawing Magdalena, even though my page was done at the end of the day, well, I have a decision. I'm dead tired. It's 22 hours later. Do I do the layout for my next page before I go to bed, or do I wake up, start brainstorming for layouts? And those were decisions I had to make. And there were times where I was like, well, this page is easy enough. So let's just do the layout now before you go to bed. My point is the job never ends when you're drawing interior pages. But drawing covers and stuff was just a lot of fun. And Top Cow started using me for a lot of covers as well. Like, well, this guy can at least sell the book drawing just the cover. And again, they gave me all the faith. Hey, man, draw all our exclusive covers because they sell a little bit better. And like everybody told me that. I was on cloud nine. They really liked my work. And it was not just guys. It was men and women and children. When I meet the fans at San Diego Comic-Con, it was such a nice experience. Because of Top Cow, it gave me a lot of exposure to everyone that ever went to that convention. And they meet me, and I made sure to always be nice to the fans because I love being treated well as a fan. And like some of these guys still buy my work till today. It's like 20 years later, and they're still buying my work. And they're like, hey, I remember meeting you in San Diego when you were, young. It's great because of Top Cow and having the faith, they were able to really put me out there. I'm very grateful.
And now, before we get into the hot girl era, because I love that era of your work, I'm a big
Yeah,
Zenescope fan. I do want to talk about two more companies briefly. And you did some work for Marvel. You did a Civil War book. You did an Ultimate Fantastic Four issue. I think you worked on
right.
the new X-Men that Mark Silvestri sort of brought you into. And then on the
Mm,
DC side, you did some Justice League 5 work in the New 52. I think you did a
right,
Flash cover and you did
correct.
Batman 50 and you had a really awesome Dark Knights Metal 3 cover set.
I did a couple Harley Quinn issues. I did a Suicide Squad one. And I know you want me to change it up, but like it's going to be all the same stories. It's very nostalgic when I worked for DC because my mom's favorite character is Superman. So when I drew JLA #1 and I got to be on the cover, that's probably my greatest achievement in my career because they used my two images over and over again, even now. DC has put me on two JLA covers and I've seen it on trading cards. I've seen it on like socks. I've seen it on blankets, and my favorite is a cereal box. I've been on the cover of a cereal box with the two images that I have that I've done for DC and my JLA covers. I've never seen my art used on such a wide scale. And I can tell you a story. One time I was walking in, I believe it was Staples, I needed to buy some supplies. And I'm walking by this calendar rack and I turn and I see my art. And I'm like, hey, wait a minute, that's me. And like I walk over and my art is just sitting in the store for random people to buy. And inside that calendar was Jim Lee, was Dave Finch, Michael Turner, Ivan Rice, and me. I was among some of the industry's top guys. And again, like I don't know how differently I can say this.
Let me ask it this way. Now that you're with all your heroes that you admired and grew up in, how did that make you feel that you're sort of on their level and that you're with them? I mean, you can never be on Jim Lee's level because he's just
No,
amazing.
nobody can.
But I think the question still stands where you're now included in that group and your art is being marketed not just to comic fans.
You know what? I've thought about it and I don't know like the real answer, but I imagine because I've worked in-house, at Top Cow and I've worked with Aspen Studios. I've been in a lot of studios, so I know the way that they're structured and the way they work. And a lot of times when they're doing campaigns, names are always going to come up. They're like, well, I like this guy's art and I like this guy's art and I like this image. And they always just vote on a yes. The editors, the big wigs that put these things together. So like, I love the idea that my name with the images that I've done, because I've drawn nowhere near the percentage of covers that Dave Finch has done, Jim Lee has done. Like I've done very, very, very little compared to those two guys. And knowing in that calendar, like I didn't have just the one image. I had my Flash was in there, my Justice Leagues were in there, and it wasn't just the one. So like with the thousands, and probably maybe a million different images of the Justice League alone, knowing that they're using images that are a couple of years old, that means that they don't care about the current look of the character. They just want the images that are going to sell the best and resonate the best with random people. Grandma, little Jimmy that's 7 years old, Uncle Willie who's like, a huge Green Lantern fan. They're catering to like the entire mass population and countries all over the world, like people, not Comic-Con fans, regular people. And they're like, you know what, these images we feel are going to be the population's favorite. And that's how I imagine they're choosing these images to help sell. Because again, DC sent me a pair of socks with my Flash art on it and these plaques and like skateboards, and they send me comps and stuff like that. And it's amazing knowing that the company, Warner Brothers, the stamp is on all of the products. It's got the faith of all of them. And knowing that I can stand with guys like Jim Lee, it's a dream come true. Because I waited in Jim Lee's line for no less than like 3 hours when I was growing up, from 12 all the way to full adult. And I would never consider him a peer. He will always be just a legend. Mark Silvestri will never be a peer, even though we're buddies and I have his cell phone number and stuff. They will always be my heroes. They're always going to be on another level. And I'm only grateful that I'm even included in the same batch of stuff that DC puts out. I'm very grateful. I'm still inspired by all of their art still to today. I go to comic shops and I still buy art from all the guys. I'm a huge fan of art and my style is the way it is because I'm such a huge fan. So like I said, walking into the store and seeing my product on the shelves, I love that. The DC heads have their favorite batch of images of their iconic character. These are images that are going to represent all of DC, all of Warner Brothers. They're like, okay, we're going to choose it and send it out to the masses. T-shirts. They sent my image on the cover of a cereal box all the way in Brazil. It's just amazing because fans send it to me. They're like, hey, I was in my supermarket store, and this is in Brazil. And they're like, I found your art on the shelf. Like, I eat your cereal every day for breakfast. And it's just like, I'm being told by someone on the other side of the globe. And again, I couldn't be more grateful because they let me know. And they recognize my image. It's embedded in their head. And they're like, holy crap, I recognize that image. It's the artist that I like from America. And they send it to me. And it's an amazing feeling what I've been through in my career. I'm very privileged. I'm very lucky. I'm very grateful. And I'll never stop feeling that way. Even as I get more popular or start working on X-Men, I'll never stop feeling grateful. It's just, I'm very, very fortunate. I'm a fortunate person.
And now let's talk about the hot girl era. And before we
Right.
get into it, I am a little bit curious because you incorporate
Mm.
your name into many of these covers as Ebas, almost like a tattoo. And
Right.
it's extremely fitting because Ebas sounds like something else. And there's a cover of Widow's Web that has Go Ass on it. And I love Widow's Web. I love Raven
Right.
Gregory and I love Autumn Ivy. She was on the podcast and she's amazing.
Right.
So, how did this come about and what started and sparked this era to start?
Oh man, that's a cool, fun story. It actually all started at Top Cow, believe it or not. There's a company called J Company, and they wanted to do their own exclusives for the Top Cow books. They would slap their cover on it, and all the other guys were too busy, like Kuchar and Michael Turner and Andy Park. They drew covers for J Company, but I was a guy that was less busy, so I started drawing a lot more. And these guys are the first ones to ever tell me that my sales were on par with Michael Turner, if not better sometimes. And that was such an unbelievable feeling. It was very surreal. I was maybe 20 years old when they told me that. And Michael Turner was a living legend at the time and still is, obviously, but he was at the height of his career. He created Aspen and Fathom, and I was just dominating everything. And knowing that I was drawing my own Fathom swimsuit specials for J Company. So I started like drawing these sexy poses, and I always felt like there was a lot of fans that really wanted this niche. There was a huge demand, like a desire to see a hot girl version of their favorite characters. And people do it all over the internet. They'll draw like a nude Supergirl or Wonder Woman or whatever. So like I knew that there was a fan base. People even do it with Disney characters. So when J Company came to me and they were like, hey, you know what, can you do these hot girl versions? It couldn't be more like the way Arnold was meant to play the Terminator, because I couldn't have been at the right place at the right time more than that. Because I'm a fan of drawing the female form. I draw it in my own style. And they gave me an opportunity. And I kept trying to push the envelope with J Company. We eventually got into the topless area. And I love the idea of pushing the envelope. Hear stories about Eminem and Marilyn Manson and Elvis Presley, like the rebels of the era. I'm not saying that I am one, but I noticed that in the media, you either love or you hate this person's product. But regardless, those people always paved the way for the next generation to do something and make it okay. Like Madonna, like she made it okay to over-sexualize music. And a lot of people at the time definitely hated Madonna for doing it, for being so raunchy and slutty and everything. But when everything calms down and subsides, no one's going to say anything bad about Elvis anymore, because he did it too, you know, swinging his hips and getting censored on TV. At the time, no one's ready for it. And when I got into drawing nipples, no one was ready for it. They weren't expecting that. And I like the idea of pushing the envelope. I love the idea of drawing something exciting and something never seen before in comic books on a mainstream level, like Zenescope. And it's so ironic, but it worked like a dream because it was all part of my plan. I definitely raised some eyebrows, I imagine, and I'm sure I offended some moms out there who accidentally see it or something like that. But it paved the way, I believe, for a whole new generation of artists that have spawned because of nudity and sexualized covers and these exclusives and what they go for on eBay. And it's going to sound bizarre, but like I believe I'm the godfather of it all. Like I started the whole thing, and eventually the topless became full nude. And now I've literally paved the way for everyone who now has their career and companies because of this situation and my desire to keep pushing the envelope. Like I beg some of these guys, please trust me, let me do this shot of just an ass on the cover, or like cutting the face off, or a girl taking her panties off. Even Zenescope said no. They're like, that's too much for us. And these were the guys that helped start it, you know. So I went over to like Big Dog Ink, and they were one of the first guys that were brave enough to print pulling panties down on a cover. Like even Zenescope was afraid. Like people were not ready. They're nervous. They don't know how people are going to react. The fans are going to react. And I knew in my gut, if you do it right and you do it classy enough with artistry, you're not going to offend them. And thank God and thankfully I was right. There wasn't an uproar. There was no outrage. And all I did was pave the way for so many new artists to do it. We got guys that are just coming up out of nowhere. You got Ryan Kincaid now. He's starting his career on all of these things. And Mike DeBalfo, they started their careers just drawing topless girls. And all of these new guys are just, hey, I want to draw these hot naked girls all day long for a living. And like, it's bizarre, but it spawned like a whole new section of the industry that has never really existed before, because now people can have a career that starts off with being a cover artist, a good girl artist. It never worked like that before. You had to be in comics, work, you draw issues and comics and pages, and eventually you can just do covers. But now there's this new section of the industry where you could start your career by just doing covers. And I'm glad that I could help inspire that. I'm glad I could help influence that. It's changed a lot of people's lives. Like a lot of people are doing Kickstarters and doing really well for themselves without being on the big two. I'm glad to be a part of it. Zenescope and the whole good girl art, it's a lot of fun. And you know what some of the best part is? That women are really into it as well. It's not just the fanboys. I have tons of females. And I remember on my last sale looking at my orders, and some of the first 4 girls that ordered one of my topless prints that I just posted were all females. all females. And it's such a delight because it's another validation. Like when my art is in the same calendar as Jim Lee, it was a validation. And knowing that I'm not offending, I'm not treating the female body wrong, I'm not offending, knowing that other women also like my work, it was a huge sigh of relief, knowing that I'm doing the beauty of a woman justice, the female body, I'm doing it justice. I'm not offending anybody or anything like that, which I don't ever want to do. Even though I try to push the envelope, I don't ever want to get to the point where it's like raunchy and offensive and gory and icky. And they say that I never cross that line. The females, they tell me, and they're like, you still somehow manage to capture the power of the sexuality of a woman. And if it comes from a woman, then there is no more validation than that. And it is my honor and my privilege to just represent. I'm grateful for the whole good girl era of art. I'm grateful to have been at the start of it and be a part of it. And I'm glad that my boldness just helped open a lot of other doors for a lot of other people, like White Widow and Widow's Web and all of those things. I feel like I'm a bit responsible for it being okay to publish and print and do these things. I'm grateful. I'm very grateful.
And to talk a little bit about Zenescope, because you played an instrumental part in a lot of the covers for Wonderland and getting that kicked off. And those are
Mm,
amazing covers. And then you've done some amazing work for Robin Hood, and especially
right.
like the Mario and the Yoshi and the Princess Peaches that you've done, because I think those are amazing. And that's definitely from your era
Thanks.
as a video gamer. So, what is that like to really get to play with these characters and really get to do cool covers that go reference other pop culture? Have them sell out like crazy. What is there, like 9 different Yoshi covers that you have out there?
Is it up to 9? Wow. It's bizarre, man. It's like a dream. Like Zenescope is actually my current favorite company to work with as a major like independent company. Counterpoint is up there, another favorite of mine because with my history, what I've been able to do over the last decade with Zenescope and the Good Girl art, I have complete and utter control, complete trust from all of those companies. Anyone that hires me, they know what they're getting. And again, it's a dream because literally can come up with any idea I want. And I'm like, hey, I'm in the mood to draw an octopus, or I'm in the mood to draw Mario or Yoshi. And all I have to do is just tell them, and they're like, dude, do whatever you want to do. Just as long as we get a topless version and we get like this regular version, as long as they get their versions, they're happy. And I really wanted to draw a video game theme, and I got Bowset, I got Yoshi, I got Bowser, I got Princess Peach. I really wanted to do a Raccoon Mario. That one may still be in the works down the line. I would love to do a Mario version. And I was just in the mood to do a video game thing, and it became a cool set. And my whole purpose behind it was to create like a little like set type gimmick. And it definitely catered to a certain genre of guys that grew up with that whole Nintendo era. And they said, yeah, go ahead and do whatever you want. And it was just a lot of fun. It was my way back in because I took a little break from Zenescope. I draw my own books now. I'm my own boss in a way. I draw my Mojo book and I get to draw my own covers of my own characters of what I design and what I want to do. So I took a little break from Zenescope, but when I came back, it was with the Yoshi covers and the Princess Peach and all of those. And I've been kind of on like a 2 or 3 year hiatus from doing work for a lot of other people. And it felt like a good comeback with those covers. And I chose a little bit of everything. I always try to make sure to keep it fresh. If I did a Go Ask cover on one issue, I try to do like a topless one on another, and then maybe focus on the lower part of the front of the girl on another cover. Like I try to change it up and turn it around. So if you ever put them side by side, you get a little bit of everything, you get a little bit of variety. And to me, it feels like you're kind of playing a director. When you're a director or a writer of a movie, you're in complete control of what the audience wants to see and what they want to experience. If you want to make the audience cry, you want to make them happy. And you kind of play God with people's emotions and feelings, you know, as a director, writer, creator. And I love the joy of what am I going to do today? What am I going to cook? What am I going to create? Like a chef, what do I want to make them experience with this particular piece? And with Zenescope and drawing for Counterpoint with Michaels, again, they trust me completely. I never have to ask permission. I try to ask the audience, what are you guys in the mood to see? Do you want to see a little bit more risque? I'm in this whole lingerie diamond mood right now. So like I'm drawing a lot of 90s and lingerie with these diamonds all over them and things like that. And I know that the audience is going to love the way this looks on their characters that they like. And I try to build this whole theme around it. And it's just a dream because I'm at the point now in my career after doing it for so long, I literally get to try anything I want. So I try to keep it fresh. I don't ever use photos. I don't know if a lot of your listeners have ever wondered with my art, because a lot of artists use a lot of photos, but it's really difficult to use photos when, like, let's say I want to do this specific ass cover. I can't be scrolling through, wasting time on the internet, which I'm sure is a joy for a lot of guys out there. But like, I don't have the time, because if you go into like the internet black hole with images of searches of hot naked girls' ass poses, I'm sure you'll get lost. Like, you'll just wake up one day and it's like, oh crap, it's 3 days later. Like, I don't have that kind of time. So like, I come up with all my own poses. I don't ever use the internet. I mean, ever. Like, I don't get computer viruses from my search engines or anything like that. I don't ever do it. I don't have the time. So like, for example, Murat Michaels, I'm sure you guys know his work and you love his stuff. He's like, hey, you know what, Ebas, we need another classic ass cover. So he's like, draw a duty poo in her butt and give us this nice ass shot. I can't just start scrolling the internet for this specific camera angle. So I think that a lot of reason why some people like my work is because of the look that I have. And like, I spent a lot of time studying, like I did when I was 12, and I was studying Jim Lee, and I was studying Silvestri's art, and like John Buscema, like I always study the subject matter. So when the time comes and you're on crunch time and you're on deadline, you can deliver your top tier quality, or at least close to it, on a certain amount of time. I do study on my off time. Like, I study the female form, like Victoria's Secrets or Pinterest, and if they're scrolling through your feed or something like that. So I do keep up to date with my anatomy lessons. I still do anatomy for drawing my superhero guys, in case I need to draw Superman or Batman. And I do a lot of homework. I do study a lot, like visually. I don't sit there and do anatomy class like in the rookie days, because when you're more advanced, you can even study with just your eyes. You don't have to bust out the pencil or the pad necessarily to study or brush up on this pose. So anyways, when I was asked to do this ass pose from Murat's book, I don't need to waste time looking for all of these photos. I can kind of sculpt the woman figure from just about any angle in my style and pretty much execute what I had in mind. It's a dream. I get to do whatever I want. I don't know if you can imagine what that's like. They're like, hey, here's a character. We need it by this date. We need her topless and nude. And I'm just like, man, I love my job. I wake up at home and I sit at my desk and I get to be like, hey, I get to play God and I get to create moods and feelings for my audience and my fans. And I'm very privileged because some of these covers, you guys and even you remember Widow's Web. You remember the Go Ass cover.
I own
And like,
that cover. That's why I remember it. It's a great cover.
thank you, man. And I sit there and I try to decide, like, of all the angles that you could put a woman in her ass in that angle, which one is going to be the one that you can't walk away from? That when you see it, this is the one that you got to have, because there's a lot of other covers out there as well, and mine are not cheap. They're pretty expensive. And I want to make sure that when you decide to drop that $300 for that limited 10, you don't hesitate and you don't regret it and you don't feel bad. You're like, oh man, this was worth every penny. It's a great feeling. And again, I get to work from home, and my fiance, she works at home too. And like, I just get to hang out all day and do these things. It's a great job. I love my job. I'm very grateful.
And to even talk about more Zenescope, because we didn't get to 1/10 of your covers, but you've got to play with Dorothy and Oz, which convinced my mom to allow me to buy more Zenescope covers when I was still under her
Uh-huh.
house. You also
Right.
did some stuff with Gretel. You've done some stuff with Van Helsing, a lot of Wonderland, a lot of Robin Hood, and a variety of other characters. And I think you hit it perfectly where you do get a lot to play with Zenescope. So what is that like, having so much to play with?
It's amazing because not only do I get to play with them, like my Magdalena story, I actually get to design them as well. Sometimes I like an existing costume and it looks really cool, but it's like Superman. Like when you look at him and it's like, does he really need to have his shorts on the outside of his pants anymore? It's like 70, 80 years later. Let's play around with that. You love the costume, you love the S and the cape and all that, but you want to kind of update it a little bit to give it a cool new spin or a new flair. And Zenescope trusts me a lot with that sort of thing. And I designed a lot of the characters. So like I try to update them to cater a little bit to my style, of course, but like also on a marketing term, like make this character a little bit more attractive or update or make it look a little bit more sexy or more beautiful, more powerful. So like a lot with these characters, I got to design them and it makes it that much more fun to draw. Like I designed Baba Yaga, I designed Robin Hood, the scar on her eye and the jewel in her bow, that's all me. I thought it would be cool when I got to draw issue 1 of Robin Hood. I drew the very first issue, the very first cover that they use. And again, this company like Zenescope, they're like, we have all these other covers, but let's just use this Ebas one to market it, to advertise, and to promote. And again, it's a privilege and it's my honor, and I love it. I got the backing of the whole company for the Good Girl art, and they trust me. And I came up with the whole character, and with her eye, I thought it would be bizarre and unique to have an archer. It's common sense that you need both eyes to have depth. If you walk around with one eye, your depth perception is immediately taken down. And I thought it would be cool to have a character, obviously in the comic book universe, because there's no way it would exist realistically. You can't have an archer with one eye. They just won't hit the bullseye. You need both eyes for depth. And I thought it'd be cool. I'm not involved with her origin. I think that was Raven like, dude, make sure she has one eye. She needs this jewel and this crystal maybe to help make these impossible shots. And that little part of her origin, it all came from her concept when I designed her. So that's a lot of fun. I got to do Dorothy's costume. I got to update some of the Scarecrow and Hook. That's all my design. Like Tinkerbell, her costume is all my design. The sparkles in her wings and like the little spirals of pixie dust. I wanted her wings to be made of this stuff. I'm like, hey, how cool would that look? On top of all the details. So I'm like, you know what? Let's just make her wings made out of this hardened pixie dust. And Zenescope, they're just nothing but thrilled. They're like, hey, cool, we get a free design. You know, a lot of times I don't charge them anymore. I used to charge for character designs, but I do so many of them now that it's like, hey, you know what? I'll just start designing these for free or whatever. And I got to do it a lot. I designed Alice's costume, which got turned into a toy. My design is on the action figure that Claiborne Moore himself sculpted. Like, it's endless. I designed so many of their characters over there and the look of them and everything like that. So it's a dream.
And one of the cool things about some of these designs and many of your covers is you almost work exclusively with two artists that do the colors and ink it, and that's Nia Rufino and Ula Moss, if I said that correctly. Both of these ladies are amazing. So what is your
Oh, yeah.
relationship like with them? Because they bring it out and they bring it to life so much, and they're awesome.
Amazing. And Sabine as well. Working with these girls, I feel a lot of times that I'm one of the lucky ones that the heavens look down because they're very sought out after nowadays. J. Scott Campbell, Frank Cho, they come knocking on these girls' doors, and their fame and notoriety is like light years above mine. I don't draw for the big two. They do. And so knowing that they don't turn down my covers, even though you got big guys that are always hunting them down, again, it's validation that my art is worth their time. It always takes them longer because of all my details. I'm very grateful to Ula, Nia, and Sabine because they can color this other artist. They can do 3 covers in a day. Like mine may take them 2 whole days. Coloring my work makes them lose money because it takes them so much time. So I'm grateful. I've been very close to a lot of them. We traveled to Comic Cons together, like a group of us, and we've all shared the same room and we eat at the same restaurants after and we grab drinks. And Nia and I, like, we helped start all of that back in the day. Like, she was the first one to really color the topless covers and the nude covers on the mainstream. So she was there at the beginning of Zenescope with me doing all of that. And we became very close and like we even became neighbors. And at one point, Nia even dated my fiance's brother and we were neighbors. We literally lived down the hall and I could like go into Nia's office and sit down and just hang out and give her pointers and like, hey, you know, can you color this like that? And can you add this effect? And we were creating magic like side by side. And she's a fellow Virgo, so we had a lot of chemistry and we connected and it was very easy to talk and collaborate. Sabine Rich is also a Virgo. It was kind of like I had 2 twin colorers that like I had the same chemistry with and they trusted me and they always listened to my advice and any pointers I may have had. And knowing that I have their complete faith as well as Ula Moss, it's just amazing because I try to give them little to no direction, especially those 3 girls, because I trust them. They've been doing it a long time. If there's a specific color choice, obviously for the Yoshi, I'm like, okay, well, we need a red and a blue and a green. But that's pretty much all I tell them. So like I trust them because I don't want to hinder their magic and their mojo. Like companies trust me, I trust my girls. They're like, do what you do, listen to your instincts. I just did a cover, I can't even tell you what it is, and I gave it to Sabine and I'm like, just do your magic. I trust you. And same thing with Ula, I just did a Key-Res cover for Zenescope. I think it was for their Kickstarter and she's sitting on her sickle or straddling it or something like that. And I didn't tell Ula a single thing. and she chose this really soft purple background, and then we did an alternate cover with a little bit more pink, and it goes into a more like cotton candy pink and purple. And I love that they listen to their instincts because that's where I get the best out of them. So I trust them, they trust me. It's a whole symbiotic relationship for sure. I'm very privileged because their colors, when it comes to like drawing beautiful females and topless females and just attractive females, they have this color palette that just catches the eye, like as much as my art does. Like you're walking by the table and like, whoa, look at those colors, like the hair, the special effects, the glow, the way the rim light bounces off booty. Like they know just as well like their craft. And I'm so fortunate because I'm working with some of the best in the industry, and Sanju as well. He colors most of my Mojo books from my own stuff. And there's nothing but trust. I only work with guys that I know that trust to make the right decisions on their end.
And obviously, we're now starting to talk about what makes a good cover and what brings out a good cover. And I don't want to give away all the trade secrets, but very quickly, what do you feel really makes a good cover? Because you've been doing this forever and you have some of the best out of Zenescope. It's you, Chazuz, Garvey, Sun Kumanaki, and there are
Mhm.
several that I'm missing here that have amazing work. And Zenescope is just a great breeding ground collectively for that.
What makes a good cover? Well, you know what? This may sound, I guess, corporate, but unfortunately, this is a business, so I definitely keep sales in mind. Whenever I draw a piece, I have to know what it's for. If it's for like a big San Diego exclusive or a big Kickstarter or a big launch, I don't ever veer from the basics. I'm constantly thinking mainstream movie poster style images because again, I'm not trying to just capture my particular fan base. I always want to push it further. I want whoever is standing next to the guy that has my cover, I want all of his buddies in the comic shop to be like, what's that? Who drew that? Like, why can't I stop looking away from this image? So I stick to the basics and make sure that I don't add a lot of storytelling or too much of my own technique. Like some guys, like maybe they're into drawing a lot of like skulls or weird camera angles or things like that. You don't want to do too much of that when it's a mainstream launch. If it's supposed to be a big hit, I definitely consider sales. And I know this sounds bizarre, but make a good cover sometimes. You have to make sure that the image is going to capture as many glances as possible, and not only catch them, keep them there. You have to make sure that when your eye lands, that if something resonates, is pulling you in. And pinup shots like Norman Rockwell does, like JC Leyendecker does, sometimes you need to have that image that looks posed, that looks like there was a director or a director of photography or someone there doing hair and makeup. I know that it's cheesy or there's no lack of substance, but those are the images that resonate the most, I believe, are the most powerful and the ones that I believe sell the most product. Alex Ross is a great example. When he's designing a specific cover of Superman where it's just a one shot, he doesn't do a lot of storytelling because sometimes he'll literally draw panels fading into the background of an image. Like he'll do a storytelling where he did Uncle Sam is laying on the ground. Like that's a storytelling image that may not necessarily sell as well, but when he's doing Superman, very straight up, you always see the S on his chest, is never obscured, his arms are crossed, very majestic looking, very pin-up looking. So if you want to draw like a good cover, you can't add too much storytelling into it unless you have 4 covers that you can do of the same book. So if you can have Wonderland, my general rule of thumb is the very first issue, make it iconic, movie style poster, very basic, pin-up like Norman Rockwell type cover, a Michael Turner type cover, very pin-up-y. On issue 2, 3, and 4, then you can start playing around with storytelling. Do the cool camera angle or do that cool thing where all the cast members show up, where she's sitting on the cover drinking a cup of tea with the Mad Hatter. All of those storytelling covers will statistically decrease in sales because the pinup image is the image that everyone has to have if they're just buying the one-off cover. That's my advice. Take it or leave it. I believe it's tried and true over the decades of me doing pinup covers. Whenever I do that basic pinup movie style shot, it's definitely a seller and it's tried and true. That would be my advice.
And now we're going to table Zenescope and the rest of the comic stuff. But I did hear a rumor, and I heard it
Mm-hmm.
from Zenescope, and I heard that you're really good at beer pong. And so I'm just curious for everybody who wants to know, and possibly there might be an event in August that you might be at. what is your average in case there is a challenge?
I do pretty good. I have an unfair advantage. I'm an artist and I have like a little bit of an eagle eye. I can get pretty good headshots in a video game. So like when I need to focus, whether I'm drinking or not, I can definitely hit that bullseye. I can play darts, drinking beer and still hit the bullseye. But again, it's kind of like playing darts with Hawkeye. I have an unfair advantage. I can definitely do pretty good. I can hold my own for sure. I can go to the last table, the last round. No problem.
So now getting back to more of a serious tone, I am curious what advice you have for people who want to get into comics, whether that's penciling, inking, writing, or just doing cover work.
I guess one answer can work for both. You know, it's stereotypical, it's cliche, but I really, really encourage studying your favorite guys. If your favorite guy is Michael Turner and J. Scott Campbell, study the heck out of them. And whoever your favorites are, find out what made them cool. What was their niche? What was their hook? Jim Lee and like Rob Liefeld, they were dynamic with their cross-hatching and their poses. Find out what it is their magic and try to incorporate into your own work so you can learn flair. And dynamism is very, very important. Todd McFarlane, he just drew super dynamic characters like Spider-Man and their poses. And study your guys. If you like me or you like Mike DeBalfo, like study whatever the magic of what we try to capture and you'll go far. Study your ass off. I studied when I was 6 years old. This is when I first started. When I first started, I have drawings from when I was 6. And I studied till I was ready to go. Always draw on all your off time. Don't watch that marathon of Netflix shows. Cut it in half and put in the time. Like there's no shortcuts. There's no way around it. You have to draw attractive looking people because at the end of the day, it is a business. A company wants to be able to sell you. They want to look at you and say, hey, you can make us money. We're going to put you on some covers. And the only way to do that is to draw things that people want to see. I recommend doing the cliche. Study, learn, and practice. There's no way around it. Even if you want to just draw covers, study, learn, and practice. Get out your magazines or your quote unquote research folder on your computer and start studying. If you need to study my work, that's fine. Use it to do that. Trace it, do whatever you have to do, but get the knowledge in your head. You want to be able to move the figure in any direction, at any time, in any pose, any angle, and do it on a timely manner. That's just good advice for anybody. So study. To today, I have not stopped studying. I still study. I still buy comics. I still look at all my influences, whether it's a photo or an artist. I still do it. Now I'm currently studying lighting, looking at sunsets. I'm looking at what Nia Ruffino used to look at, just stare at the sky and look at the different hues of blue. Study. Right now I'm studying lighting, so I'm looking at color because I kind of got the whole human being down. I can draw spaceships and buildings and all that stuff, but now I need to learn lighting and color and shadows. If you want to draw covers and good girl art, you got to get that knowledge in your head. Practice. If you want to draw comics, look at the way guys draw pages, Jim Lee's pages and George Jimenez, just look at his pages and figure out the dynamic energy that they have, Todd McFarlane's energy, and study. There's no way around it.
And then finally, I would like to give you an opportunity to promote yourself. Do you have a Facebook page, Twitter, website, Instagram, Mojo that's coming out, or anything
Yeah.
else that you could talk about con-wise, or anything that people should be looking out for, or where can people find when a book is going to drop of yours?
That's a little tougher. I'm very bad with announcing. My biggest suggestion is to follow me on social media. I update my Instagram and Facebook on a religious basis. So I definitely post everything there. But if you want more VIP stuff, go to my website. My website is ebasmojo.com, ebasmojo.com, ebasmojo.com. And everything that I have for sale goes there first. So if you subscribe, I have a free mailer. You can hit the free mailer subscription. We send out VIP information, behind the scenes, exclusive, first dibs on everything. And it's free. You just open your email and you get the latest announcements. If I draw like a nice piece that I did on the side for fun, before it hits Facebook, before it hits the social media, my mailer list finds out before anybody else. So definitely subscribe, ebasmojo.com. And I have a monthly art raffle. If you want to get free prints, I do a monthly print for $30 a month. You can join my platinum member subscriptions and you get free shipping on all orders and you get to be in the VIP section. It gives you discounted things. And I do a monthly art raffle, all for only $30. You get a chance to win an original art that I do on a monthly basis for only $30, and you get a free monthly print even if you don't win. And it's the platinum tab on my website. It's right on the homepage in the upper up a ride, become a platinum member at ebasmojo.com. It's a lot of fun. Or eBay is a huge place to get all my covers. If you just Google Ebas, EBAS, on eBay on the search engine, all of my issues are there. It's the easiest, fastest way to get my product. Unfortunately, it's very expensive. To find anything under $30 is very rare. They're very expensive. A lot of my books go for usually $100 to $200 on average. Again, my social media, you just type in my name on Facebook, and that's where you'll find my Instagram is also my name, Eric Basaldua. And that's where you want to go to get all of my latest stuff. My Mojo issues, I think my next one will be launched on a Kickstarter. I'm working with Don McTeague and Dave Finch. We're going to do some jam pieces on some Mojo covers. For my issue 7, I believe I'm going to do it as a Kickstarter. So if you subscribe to my mailer, you will definitely get all the updates and you won't miss a thing. And that'll be for my issue 7. Mojo is an art book. It's in the form of a comic, and it's just page to page, just art. It's an art gallery, but in a comic book form. So instead of buying one $60 book, you can buy a $20 Mojo book. You get it graded. Everyone gets them CGC'd. You can get them remarked. And I got 6 issues now. Each one of them has 3 or 4 variants. Other people have done exclusives with my Mojo and have their own versions of the book as well. And if you want just a sample of my art, buy a $20 Mojo book, and it's got my nudes, my topless. It's got everything in there.
Well, thank you so much for being on. Obviously, for me as a huge fan, this has been anything but a pleasure, and this has been something that I have wanted to do ever since I first saw my first cover with you. And as always, to everybody, I appreciate everybody listening. We can be found on SoundCloud, iTunes, Stitcher Radio. You can follow me on Twitter at Popanimecomics. Check out my website, popanimecomics.com. Check out my Facebook page, Popanimecomics. And until next week, everybody, have a wonderful week.